Today we're really lucky to have the wonderful Rahel and Bailie. So I will just note that her job title, which is one that we could all maybe take, is content solutions strategist, which I just think is so good because yeah, content strategy is really all about solutions, and content strategy actually often feels a bit soft in relation to how tangible so much of the work that we end up doing is in that realm. So if you don't know her, Rahel is one of those people who has been thinking really seriously about content for and generously sharing that thinking for a long time. So in 2013, she co-authored the book, the Content Strategy book, along with Noz Urbina. I hope I pronounced that right. She has also consulted with a lot of big organizations, including Ivy League universities. And she also, am I right, Rahel, that you are actually one of the kind of founding creators of like one of the first master's university programs in content strategy? I kind of have I don't,
Yes,
yeah, right.
there's one
That,
one worldwide in the world. There's one program that is a master's program that is quite comprehensive and that I agreed to lend my name to, and that's in Austria. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Which is one of the ways I first kind of heard about you, I think, because I was like looking
Oh,
for like where can you do, yeah, anyway. So anyway, today Rahel is here. She's going to share her content integrity model. If I'm not sure if you've come across this, it's really cool. From a personal perspective, I'm really interested in this because when Rahel kind of wrote about this initially, I saw a post on LinkedIn and I kind of came across it and I was like, oh, that idea of integrity, content integrity is really compelling because it captures something from that problem that I think we're always trying to solve, which is like the corrosive effect of like not well managed content on a user experience overall. And I ever since I kind of like first heard that, I was like, I really want to hear more about this from Mel. So we were really lucky that she said yes and agreed to come and tell us a bit more about it. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Rahel now, and she will share her screen and tell us a little bit about the content integrity model. Thank you, Rahel.
okay. I'm sending a request to share screen.
And I am trying to accept that. There we go. You should be able to
There we
do it
go.
now.
All right. So I'm thrilled to be here and talk about the content integrity model because I think it's uh, a, a big departure from how organizations think about content and sometimes how we even think about content. So without further ado, what is content integrity? So if you
Sorry,
look
Rahel, we haven't got
online,
your screen share yet. I'll just confirm.
oh,
Yeah, didn't
hold
come
on.
through.
Maybe okay, let me go back and oh, I see, because yes, there we go. Screen to share.
Beautiful. Thank you.
There.
Okay,
You should be seeing it now.
it is there now. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, yeah, so what is content integrity? So if you look online at content integrity, if you just do like a search, hopefully mine comes up first. But aside from that, content integrity is usually described as an outcome of brand values and technical aptitude. So you think of you know, respectfulness, inclusiveness. It uses the right language level, and you know the social contract is clearly explained. So when you think about content integrity, you come across these things like this definition that I found online. You know, the Healthline says, here's our approach to content integrity, and they talk about the kind of the editorial and medical approach. They don't talk about really well, they talk about content creation, but they don't talk about the management of it. Trustpilot has like a slightly different definition because their whole thing is that basically you can believe in us, you can trust our content. So this is another one. TripAdvisor, the same thing. You can trust our content. You know, we're not cooking the books, in other words. So what we see though now is more that you need to have the technical capabilities to be able to do all the things that you need to do to make trust happen. I'll use that as the framing for this. So your technical aspects are what facilitate your automated delivery, because if you can think of, Trustpilot and these others, TripAdvisor, they get tens of thousands of things in an hour. They could never keep up without some sort of um, automation. Oh, excuse me, behind the scenes. So you've got this balance of the editorial side and the technical side, which I've talked about for ages, but now we're getting more sophisticated about it. So when I'm thinking about content integrity, I look at kind of these four sets, right? In a Venn diagram of strategic, editorial, operational, and infrastructure. Um, and it has to be balanced. You have to balance those four aspects. You can't have editorial quality without having the right infrastructure to support that. You can't have strategic excellence without operational excellence. And really the expectations for content performance is constantly being raised. And we were talking about this just informally just before we started the webinar about how conversation designers, so the people who manage chatbots, are discovering that uh, they can't get reliable results from their LLMs because agentic AI especially is uh, kind of revealing every flaw and every wart in um, your content repository. So you have this expectation of content performance being really at a peak level right now, but you can't deliver unless the content is has its integrity at the back end at the source. So we're going to go through each section separately, and I've got this thing in the middle, this diamond, where the strategic part enhances consumer value, because after all, like, every company is not necessarily reaching for the gold standard. What they want to do is be better than the competition. And sometimes that bar is pretty low, but they strive to be better. And so it's enhancing the consumer value enough that people will stick with them. And at the other side, it's enhancing the organizational value. So the value to the organization is usually content operations, working with efficiency to be able to keep up to deliver on that consumer value. And then the editorial is to serve the end users, that kind of editorial quality. And then internal users is the infrastructure, again, to make things happen with efficiency. So I'm going to use an example, and I've chosen a government example, and I'm going to use that all the way through just to kind of demonstrate each set. So we have a local government council, and they're launching a service that provides housing benefits to vulnerable people who meet the criteria to qualify for those benefits. So it sounds pretty simple, right? You have certain things like maybe poverty level or vulnerability issues or so on, and we can give you housing, some housing benefits, and you need to meet the criteria to get those housing benefits. Okay. So in strategic integrity, we're looking at content that's obviously it's produced for a reason. We don't just say, go write some poetry for us because you've got spare time. I mean, everybody's got a business reason that they want to, or an organizational reason. I shouldn't say business because sometimes, well, I guess you're in the business of government. So, but you're providing this, with some sort of organizational value. So when we look at this, we're looking at why are we doing this? Well, and how do we do it? So first of all, you have to have research because you need to know what the audience needs. And you're probably going to need to personalize because you've got multiple variants. And those variants could be, we have different like the easy part, different languages or different regions, right? In this area of the country, this applies, whereas in that region of the country, that applies. Or it could be rural versus urban, or it could be life situation, right? Students versus seniors, for example. So you're going to have to research all those needs and figure out what they need. And then you need to be able to support that growth with content that is targeted for them. And so now you're not talking about writing one paragraph, you're talking about writing many paragraphs or many pages, perhaps. And so where this kind of like bleeds into editorial is your content needs to fulfill the intended function with a good UX, and it needs to be AI ready because now AI is the gatekeeper to content before it ever gets to consumers. So it has to be AI ready and needs to meet regulatory compliance and any ethical criteria that your organization sets in place. And that's going to be slightly different depending on the regulated industry and so on and so forth. And where it bleeds into the infrastructure side is to be able to scale and to have that automated delivery, you have to have this infrastructure in place to be able to support that that harmonizing of the content, and then to be able to push it out where it needs to be pushed out automatically without human intervention. So it influences the editorial side with better UX while meeting your objectives, and it influences the infrastructure dimension by being supported with the appropriate tech stack. Now, I don't know if many of you know Kate Kenyon. She has this, she's another content strategist who lives actually not far from me um, in London. And she gave this example of this change management impact graph. So, where do you start, for example? So she says you have this quadrant of high complexity and low complexity, and then low impact and high impact, and you look where the content issues are, and then the business issues are, and where it overlaps the most, that you start there, right? In this case, you might start with your low complexity and high impact, and maybe your high complexity and high impact, but you probably wouldn't do low complexity and low impact because there isn't much overlap between what the business wants and what the content issues are. So in our example, we could say, okay, so the housing, the government folks, whoever they are, you're probably not politicians, but you're civil servants. They're sitting there and kind of going like, okay, what are our objectives? So they're going to look at business objectives, right? They're going to go, okay, we want to, have people just be able to chat with a chatbot because it's just easier for them to interact that way. We want them to be able to inquire about their housing benefits in some sustainable way. We want to make sure residents can figure out whether or not they're eligible. We want them to understand the application process. We want to, if they make an application, we need to be able to track that status. And then if they're rejected and they want to make an appeal, we have to have a way for them to do that. So like, okay, fine. And it could be, the equivalent of a product owner or a product manager who does this. And oh yes, we want residents to be able to self-serve and get accurate information because we don't want everybody calling the call center because then we'll be overwhelmed. And we have this resident population who have various degrees of digital literacy and language needs, and so we have to be able to respond to them. And it's like, okay, so those are our business objectives for why we want to produce the content in the first place. Now we go to the editorial side. So the editorial integrity means that you're providing user value, and you've got like accuracy, compliance, you've got, various guidelines. Maybe you've got legal requirements, regulatory things, even for government, because they've got certain acts that they have to follow and fulfill. And you've got the use of AI to evolve your content creation more towards content curation rather than creation. And if you think about how we, in our industry, we use AI as like an intern, right? Can you draft this for me? And then I go through and I fix it up and make sure all the pieces are there. But I don't have to start with a blank page and spend 3 hours doing something that the AI will spit out in in a minute. So, I'm going to do that. I'll be more curating the content as opposed to just creating it from scratch. And I'll be monitoring how AI is treating my content. And then I'm going to enrich that content with semantics like metadata and maybe there's a taxonomy or a knowledge graph in our organization that I have to be aware of to make sure that the content has the right context so it can be delivered the way it needs to be delivered. So when I think about editorial integrity, I'm thinking about the creation, to make sure it complies with accessibility and plain language and any regulations and market readiness as well. Like, is it fit for purpose? And is it free of cognitive bias or as free as we can make it? And then I have to think about the curation of this content. So as we were talking about it, and making sure it's got the right keywords, the metadata, and all the semantic devices that it needs to have. And then where it kind of bleeds over into strategy is what we talked about before, is that it has a better UX and it meets business objectives. And also it bleeds over into or overlaps with your operational objectives, which is I want to make automation possible. And that is to make it like machine readable. There's metadata on there, there's some sort of tagging on there that makes it machine readable. So that means I need to have strong semantics on there. And so that's going to, when I think about content integrity, I think about all of those things. So when I'm thinking about content objectives, like what makes content quality, I think about, I came up with this rates acronym a number of years ago, and I use it in my teaching. So it's relevant to users, it's accurate because that protects your brand. Well, and it protects users as well, but and it's informative so that it supports the user objectives. It's timely, so it's not out of date. It's engaging to the users, and so engaging to, I don't know, radiologists in medical devices is very different from engaging to children learning about safety, right? So it's, engaging can be, I don't mean it's got to be cute or it's got to be funny. I'm just talking about it's got to be appropriate to those user. And it has to adhere to standards. And whether those are plain language standards or technical standards, there are standards that it needs to adhere to. So, when we think about content, like there are lots of regulations that we might not even be aware of. And so when I think about content regulations, I'm thinking about avoiding risk. And we've worked with a lot of um, yeah, like life sciences and medical devices and so on. But and we've got things like potential of legal penalties. You've got the regulators that can come in and go, you can't, you're not allowed to do that. And I've had it happen where 2 weeks, I sent my brand new content operations manager, who I think was so traumatized by it, he moved to New Zealand. Not long after, um, 2 weeks to find all of the regulatory statements that needed to change. It could be, abuses related to AI or cognitive bias. So you have to think about those things. And when I'm looking at, oh, what are the things in just in the UK that we have to think about? I came up with all of these regulations, and if you actually ask an LLM, what are the content regulations, appropriate to that are applicable to the content in this country, they'll get, it will generate a list. And it'll generate a much longer list than this, and then you can kind of pick through it for the ones that apply. But all of these things can be appropriate. Like there's, for example, in the EU, now there's the Right to Repair Act. So if you're a manufacturer, you have to think about right to repair. So all of those things are going to affect how you produce content. So in our example situation, when I'm looking at editorial quality, you could say, okay, how do we take those strategic objectives and translate those into content quality? So we want to make sure that the information is serving the strategic objectives and it's fit for purpose and by both the residents of the jurisdiction and by the AI-enabled chatbots that are going to interpret it before they pass it on to those residents. We want to create content that covers all aspects of the service. So we're not just going to write about this and this. We're going to make sure we cover all of those things about application tracking and appeals and the whole bit. We want to deliver, very consistent information, up-to-date information, accurate. We want to make sure that the council meets its obligations under your public sector accessibility and plain language requirements. And you want to tag the information with enough metadata that the chatbot can retrieve and surface answers in an accurate way. And in one country that I was doing a workshop with, they said, we're a small country and our neighboring country is, if you don't specify, for our little country, then you will get the regulations for the neighboring country, and then you fill out the forms wrong, and then you get rejected. And so, like, how do we come up there? Well, it's all to do with metadata, and I will give you an example near the end of this webinar. So then we get to operational integrity. So operational integrity is, when you think about our operating model, it's like, how can we do things efficiently? So yes, we want quality, but we don't have time to like handcraft everything. We need to, it is a production line, like let's face it. So how can we still have quality while doing things efficiently? And how do we get rid of those pesky rote tasks, right? So we can automate wherever possible. We can use intelligent content principles. And if you don't know the book, Intelligent Content, a Primer, you can still get it from XML Press or from Amazon or, your local bookstores. It about how to tag up content with enough context for automated delivery. And you have to have a good governance model because you can have all of these great principles in place, but if people don't follow the rules, then it will all fall apart. So when I think about the operational side of things, there's this automation because you want to be able to get things done reliably and to process them, to process your content properly. So you've got structure, semantics, and technical interoperability. I mean, that's your kind of triumvirate of operational efficiency, and you have to have the governance side. And so where this bleeds into the editorial side is again, oh, actually, no, that's the one for strategy, but it's the one we talked about before. And where it bleeds into infrastructure side is that you need to have production at pace, and to do that, you have to have the right tech stack. So what really frustrates me is that where companies, you've got like massive demands for content, and they give you a tool that's meant for casual business use. And I'm talking about Microsoft Word or Google Docs. That's not a production grade authoring tool, right? So it's like managing your corporate finances in Excel because it's free, right? Like how can you do that? You can't. So they buy QuickBooks or they buy something, right? Yeah, the enterprise version or anything down from that. But do they get you a production grade authoring tool? Well, they would say, well, these things don't exist. Like, what are you talking about? Because they don't understand. And we've never been good at making them understand. However, there have been production grade tools out there for 30 years. It's just they don't know what they are. And I could regale you with stories about how gatekeeping technologists will go and do a Google search and they'll come back with like apples, oranges, broccoli, and a toilet brush and kind of go like, you have the choice of these four. Go, what? Like, they've obviously done some sort of a keyword search and just come back with this, and you go like, no, 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 that's not how it works. But yeah, they expect you to do things without having the right tools to be able to do them. And so this is where it like it's setting you up for failure, right? And you don't want that. So we kind of go from silos to collaboration. And breaking down silos, if you think about physical silos, you don't want to break down the silo. All your grain's going to spill out on the ground. What you want to do is ventilate them, because if you don't ventilate a silo, it just becomes a powder keg and you can have an explosion. So the opposite to the silo is collaboration. And if you think about like how we collaborate, if someone comes in from emergency, that there's been an accident, nobody stands around and goes like, that's not my job, right? They just kind of like jump in, let's save the patient. And I think we need to get more collaborative in that way. And I've just been involved in founding an organization called the Kinetic Information Association, and it's run by the Kinetic Council, which is um, the volunteer group. So right now it's kineticcouncil.org. And we're doing that. We're bringing all of the professions together under this big tent to say, the data people have to work with the content people, and the CMS developers have integrators need to work with the content people, and the AI folks need to work with us, and the semantic folks and we all need to work together to make the magic happen. We can't just rely on the most frustrating thing is like data scientists who like, we can do everything with reference data sets. Like, no, you can't take a chapter and stuff it into the cell of a database and call it a day. It just doesn't work that way. And so, you need to have that cross-discipline collaboration. So what we've got here is, collaboration has kind of four quadrants to it. So you've got coordination, where you need to have these mechanisms to help people be able to know what they're doing and what their role is and how to work together well. Then you've got cooperation. So if you don't have the right incentives in place, people will work towards the incentive. So if your incentive is like, how many clicks do we get on a page? They're not going to care about what you want to do if it's going to affect their bonus or their metrics or their KPIs. So you have to actually change the incentives to make it like, okay, how do we make X happen? And making X happen is uh, going to kind of change how we function. Then you're going to have connections. So you have to develop those relationships with other disciplines so that you can sit down and have those conversations, and it's not going to turn into something adversarial. It will just, you'll be able to cooperate and collaborate because you've got the connections. And then capabilities is like, if you don't have the skill sets, if you've never upskilled your team, then you can talk about this collaboration all you want, but nobody's going to be able to actually do the doing. And this happens, like, I'll give you a very concrete example is production grade authoring. Technical writers have been using it for 30 years. And if you ever listen to Michael Ian Tosca, who's can be really intense. I just did a webinar with him last week, and it was even making my brain hurt. But he's was one of the kind of the founders of the standard that let you put embed semantics into content while you were authoring it. Like, why you're writing it, so like just put the semantics on it while you're doing it. And now when somebody comes in to actually learn to use that software, it takes upskilling. It's anybody can do it, but it takes upskilling. So if you haven't taught people that, then and you just throw some software on there at them, it looks intimidating. So you've got to be able to have that, and you need to have this kind of like change management process that will support it. So you have to have these new incentives, you need to have new metrics, and you need to have support. And so these are some of the things that you think about when you're thinking about governance, is like the power structures, whether we want to acknowledge them or not. We have to think about how you change those. Like, for example, how many of you have tried to say like, okay, I was director of content, And they said, yes, that means all content, including marketing. But you go to the chief marketing officer and they're like, oh, excuse me, no, right? Like they're used to being the kingpins, and to shift that is really hard. Um, you need to have metrics that reward this cross-silo cooperation and tools and training, right? So that people don't fall back on kind of tried and true uh, work habits because it just is comfortable, right? And if you've ever tried to teach yourself uh, the Dvorak keyboard, let me tell you that will show you how hard it is to change from QWERTY to Dvorak, and that's how hard it is to change these neural networks that are turned into superhighways in our brains. So here's going back to our example, here's the operational efficiency. Well, because the content has multiple channels and multiple teams, we need a shared source. We need clear ownership to keep that consistency of the content. We need a structured workflow so that we don't have a lot of manual intervention. We need a single source so that if you make an update in one place, it propagates across all the channels automatically. You need the governance model to define who owns the content, because everyone is empowered to add something and no one's ever empowered to take it down. So you need to have those things spelled out. And then you need this change management process in place to make sure that anytime the policy triggers a change, it's coordinated across all your teams and everyone knows what they're doing. And I've got a link there to Intelligent Content, a primer, and there's actually, well, once I send the PDF around, if you click there, it'll give you a sample chapter of the book. So now our last, it's not a quadrant, our last set is in infrastructure integrity. So you need that infrastructure to be able to do all the things that we've been talking about. And that means that you can enable the processing and delivery of personalized content in multiple channels. You can't do that all at the last mile, right? You can't, we were also talking about this earlier, is if you're getting food delivered through one of the food delivery services, you can get the drivers better scooters and better GPS and nicer helmets, but it's not going to help you get your food faster if the kitchen is a mess. And a lot of times our content kitchens are a mess because they've never wanted to invest in content or in the time to clean up the content. And now everybody wants a chatbot, everyone wants agentic AI, and it's exposing all of the content debt. All of the warts are just on display now, and everyone's starting to freak out about content debt. So one of the big uh, criteria for success is corporate growth. And so if you want to be able to scale, you have to have some automation. You need an infrastructure that allows you to scale. So it's kind of like going from Excel to a proper accounting reporting thing. You need to have the same automation capabilities in content. So when I think of infrastructure integrity, I'm thinking of value chain support. And if you don't know about value chains, go look it up, because all the information, the enterprise architects will talk about value chains, and someone actually did a really good value chain presentation at TC World. And he talked about how you can map content to the value chain. And so you want to be able to do that, support their value chain by processing and using things like structure and semantics and interoperability. And then you want information enablement. So this is also something that comes from business. There's like a boot camp for CEOs who want to 10x their companies, and they have these 13 principles, and the 13th one is information enablement, and they all go like, how do we do this? And the guy who runs it, like, bless him, he says, go talk to your content people, they'll know how. And they're like, content people, like, oh, what? They bring value. So it is we need to have these ecosystems that have the right technology, the right processes, the right workflows, and so on. So where this bleeds into the operational dimension is, what makes automation possible. It's strong semantics. And then on the strategic side, this is enabling the scalability and business growth. And this is where we get to content kinesis. So content kinesis, the definition of kinesis is movement in response to a stimulus. So we don't actually publish content anymore. We create content and then we park it somewhere. And it's in a CMS, it's in a knowledge base, it's in somewhere. And then downstream systems call it. So that's the stimulus. So the content is sitting there, they call it. And the way I explain it often is that if I ask Siri or Google or Alexa, which I can't say because it'll trigger something in the room here, um, for, what's the weather in London tomorrow? All that knowledge isn't sitting in that little disc, the little puck on your thing. They're going out and they're retrieving it, and then they are feeding it to you, and they are interpreting it from text to voice. So there are like three things going on there, retrieval, interpretation, retrieval, and then transformation. So that is the definition of kinesis, and it happens all over the place. So it happens now, especially with AI, where you say, uh, I want to know about blah, 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 and you get this AI summary. It's gone out, it's found some things, it's interpreted, and it's transformed it, and it's giving you the AI summary. So now we've got all these sophisticated ways that we need to deliver content, and the um, the content delivery platforms, whether that be a CMS or a knowledge base or a self-serve portal or whatever it may be, that content, or AI enabled chatbots, that content needs to move around. And this is why we started the Kinetic Information Association, to help professionals prepare for those types of complex information delivery. So if you find yourself like really relating to this, you might want to at least sign up for the newsletter. They have a bi-monthly Kinetic Coffee where there's a presentation and discussion about it. And then in the alternate months, we have Kinetic Confidential, where we have small groups where it's kind of cone of silence, and you come there with a specific problem and want to talk about it in confidence that you can. So we've got those things going on so far, and some other initiatives like a knowledge graph initiative and so on and so forth. So when you think about it, we've got content that is distributed across a lot of repositories. So you might have like a content repository, and that might be your knowledge management for your product knowledge. You could have data that lives in databases, and so it could be in something like a PIM, a product information management, that tells you, oh, I've got a water bottle, and it's this tall and this wide, and it holds this amount, and when it comes in the box, here's the size of the box, so the warehouse can predict how much space it would take. Like, so there's all that kind of data. Then you've got, and I called this like staff content, but I should probably call this like product knowledge, but it's not always a product. These are things that you would use. Um, yeah, I guess it could be product or service knowledge. And then here's marketing content, and it's usually kept separately because it works on a very different um, rhythm. And so you've got a content repository there, and then you've got assets. So you've got images, attachments, PDFs, and so on, that live in a digital asset management system. And so you've got like product knowledge here, but also product knowledge there. You've got product data there. You've got product data there. So you've got these different repositories, and it's the technologists have figured that part out. Like, how do you get a piece of data into a piece of content, right? Like the price is this much, or that it's this many available. If you think about any Amazon page where it will tell you there are nine left, or it's out of stock, and or it's there are three white ones, but there are no blue ones left, right? So it knows this because it's integrating things, and the price comes from the pricing tool and the images come from there, and it just shows up on a page and you don't even really think about it. So they've figured out that part yet. What they haven't figured out is um, the content that's the what I call the staff content here, where this is the stuff that is where you have a product or service and it's multiplied by, eight products. You've got eight product lines, and in those eight product lines, you've got 10 products each. Now you've got 80 places where that content could be used, and you need to single source it because you don't want to update it 80 times every time something changes. That part they haven't figured out yet. I mean, it is figured out, but most companies don't know about it yet. So the big companies like Intel, SAP, I don't know, like name a, NVIDIA, they haven't figured out, right? They've got tech writers who've been doing this for years, but in the majority of companies, they don't know about this. So they think everything can be solved with Word and and a bicycle on the front. So a content ecosystem, when I think about content ecosystems, now this one looks a bit complicated, and I don't want to get into the complications, but you can study this kind of in your own time. But really, you've got three environments that are important. So you've got your authoring environment, where you have to be able to create and manage your content, and that's like your draft space. Think about it as the draft space. This is pre-publication. Then you've got an orchestration environment, and the orchestration part is where you take all of the raw data, the raw content, and you can mix it up and do the things you need to do with it. So if I think about this, it'd be like if I was going to create a PDF, then the PDF creation process would be in the orchestration part, right? And so there's usually not much that you need to do there, but if it's not set up right, you're going to get, like if you didn't have the proper PDF creation scripts, you wouldn't get a PDF at the end, you'd get a mess, right? So you've got authoring and then orchestration, and then you have a delivery environment. And your delivery environment is where things go to be stored. And I show here a digital asset management system because if you think about it, let's say you're a photographer. So you don't take your photos in InDesign. You take your photos with a camera, right? So that would be your creation environment or your authoring environment. And then you would orchestrate it. You would save as, you would work on in Photoshop maybe, and then you go and you store it in your digital asset management system. And same thing we've got here is you have an authoring environment where you work with all of your content components. Here's where you would aggregate. It would auto aggregate. You would set up the aggregation process and it would aggregate it, and then you would store it in your content delivery platform. And then the content delivery platform does the publishing on demand, right? When you need something. So going back to our example where we have a sturdy infrastructure. So your chatbot, you'd say, okay, well, we need a content repository that's structured and semantically enriched so that the machines can retrieve it. The content has to have metadata on it, yes, and it needs to have by topic and by audience and by effective date so the chatbot can find the right content for the right audience, and then it needs to be structured and tagged so the chatbot can find the right answers. And we need a versioning system so the chatbot can pull answers from the latest content. And we need this infrastructure to be to support automated, accurate content delivery. So that would be, for that housing service. So you would think here are the requirements for the infrastructure. And I'm just going to take like a breath here and say that kind of concludes the content integrity end of things. But everyone asks about search. And so I just wanted to add in a couple of slides about search because this is the big thing is like how do we change how we create our content so that the AI enabled chatbots or search engines can find us. So, excuse me. So the reality of search now is that it's no longer about SEO. And I've had a few organizations come to me recently saying, we used to rank right in the top, like what's the best piece of software in this category, and we ranked up there, with whatever. And all of a sudden, Google flipped the switch, and now we're not flipped the script, and we're not even showing up as an option at all. Like, never mind in the top five, we're not in the top anything. So SEO is all the SEO techniques are not really working anymore. So they say SEO gets you found, GEO gets you AI trusted, and AEO gets you quoted. So GEO is generative engine optimization, and AEO is answer engine optimization. So when you think about SEO, it was about how you create content to rank highly in tradition. Oh, excuse me, traditional search engine results. So, you would look at things like keywords and you would optimize your headings and you would match your content to the intent and so on. And, that's fine. But now you have to think, do I also need to be um, kind of the authoritative source? And so that example I had of the smaller country and the larger country, well, that needs GEO. And so the way you would do it is to make sure that your country name is prominent and that you're tagging that with the right schema so that you tag the name of your organization with organization so that the LLMs understand that this is an organization name. So when I think of there's a company called On Sportswear, ON. And the word on is like a preposition, right? It's so when you think about it, it's like, how does a search engine understand that this is not just a generic preposition and this is the name? Well, you would tag it with like company name. And so then when somebody's looking for sportswear companies, it's like, okay, it's a company name. I can include it with that, right? So you need to think about like the GEO is for, you know, you have to have like this explicit structure and labeling to make sure it understands. So even in for the country, what we said was, you need to if you want to get this service and name of the service, so it's like you tag it with the service name from this country and then tag the country name and it's compliant with this act of this year, so then you tag that and then all of these things cumulatively boost your credibility and your authority as being able to dispense that information because you're not just Joe Blogs writing about it, you are actually the country, that country. So you have that authority. Now, AEO is slightly different because that is kind of like FAQs. Now, the FAQ schema has been deprecated by Google. Too many companies were gaming the system, and so they just went, we're not going. Yeah, what they said is, you don't have to take out the markup for FAQs. We're just going to ignore that markup. Like you don't have to spend money taking out all the FAQs. Did I just put my hand up? Hold on. Oh, okay. That's weird. I don't know what I did. Maybe I leaned on something. Oh, yes, that's what I did. Okay. Um, oops. Um, so yeah, we're not going to make you spend money taking all the markup up, but we're not using that anymore to surface answers. Now there was a something called a microfact markup, but I can't seem to, I don't know if it's disappeared or if they are changing. And microdata seems to be only for financial institutions now. So this stuff is changing all the time. But what you want to do is um, tag up the things that are just the answers. So if you have a complete paragraph for GEO, but there's that one answer, if somebody says like, what is the income level to qualify for this service, and you have that one sentence in the middle of a paragraph, you can tag that up as the answer. Like this is the answer. If you're going to deliver one sentence, deliver this sentence, right? And so what I did is, and you can try this at home, it's very effective, is you can just say, here's a page, hey, Claude or ChatGPT or whichever your LLM of choice, rewrite this for GEO, show me the markup. Rewrite it for AEO, show me the markup, and then compare them. And then you can say, write it for GEO and AEO and SEO all at the same time, show me the markup. And then you can make informed decisions about how you want to start rewriting your content. And actually, some of them, I was quite impressed because there were things on the page that had been unclear or missing, but because you needed to do it for markup, it also became clearer for the end user. So that was kind of interesting. And I will just conclude by saying, it's not enough to focus on editorial quality anymore. You also need like strategists, architects, semantics professionals, and engineers, as well as content designers to come together and work together to make this happen. So it's kind of like, being building a house, right? You can't just have a plumber. You've got to have carpenters and electricians and so on. So, and how you work internally is going to be reflected on how what's delivered externally. So you need to have all these four dimensions to deliver something effectively. And on that note, we've got well, I can stay longer. I don't know about anyone else, but I can stay longer. And I've also added some, how you can find me if you have a question and that you don't have time to answer here or you want to ask me privately. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rahel. What I'll do is I'll do some announcements, and then if anyone has any questions, since Rahel's offered to stick around, you can pop them in the chat and she can answer them.
yeah, if you
But
send me
thank
a
you.
list, I will answer all of them and send them back.
Yeah, that's good too. We like to send the chat through after because you probably can't, we should would have found it hard to carry along. There's been some really good chat alongside and reactions to what you're saying. One of which is a call out to your general use of like metaphors being so good. So there's a few definitely like a number of quotable moments. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for sharing your kind of like knowledge and insights. There's a lot of really interesting food for thought. Okay, I will just run through the announcements. If anyone has any announcements, pop it in the chat. We'll make sure we announce before the end. In the meantime, I'll just do a couple of weave announcements. So we're doing a call out. So we're trying something new in July where we're doing lightning talks because one of the things people have said is that they'd like to hear more from the community about kind of what they're working on. We wanted to give people the chance to do like a short 10-minute lightning talk about something that you find that you've been working on, something that you think people will find really interesting, or it could just be a little case study of something you've done that you think is really cool. So Emma's going to drop a URL in the chat. Feel free to sign yourself up for one of those. You don't have to know what it is yet. You can just say, I'm interested and come back to it later. And we'll post that on LinkedIn and stuff as well. So if you don't get it now, you can get it then. We've got a couple of training coming up as usual. Content design fundamentals in July. Gen AI, we've launched a second course of that because the first one sold out, and we've got a content design in action coming up as well. Past talks are on YouTube. This one will be on YouTube too. So if you missed it or if you want to share it and tell people about something that got you thinking and that you want to kind of share knowledge about, you can use the YouTube link to do that. And then next month, we have another legend of content strategy, which is Abby Covert. So she will be joining us for a bit of a fireside chat about her new book, Timeless Sense Making for Modern Sense Makers. So you should definitely come and join for that too. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, I'll just stop the screen share and have a look if we've got any
We've
questions.
got an announcement in the chat from Joanne.
Oh.
Joanne, do you want to give it a shout out or would you like us to read it?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so this is lovely. Lovely talk. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share that I started a content strategy community in Adelaide back in February because I was lonely. I needed content friends. And I was in
Yeah.
Adelaide. And so I've popped the link in the chat. If you would like to join us, just come on over. We have like 30 people at the moment. And my first meetup had one person show up. So that was a success. So yeah, that
All
was
been there.
yeah.
Well done, awesome, and definitely we'll pop a link out as well. Happy to share for you. That's awesome.
Thank
So
you.
We
and
had
can we
some
join
pretty
if we're
low
not in
numbers in
Adelaide?
our early days, Joanne.
Sorry, what was that?
We had some pretty low numbers in our early days too
Yeah,
when
I
we were
think
doing in person meetups in
yeah.
Melbourne. But yeah, that's
Okay.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
Can anyone join, Joanne, or just people from Adelaide?
anyone can join. You can join and support us virtually. Because I don't think I want to be so exclusive. And if you do happen to visit Adelaide from time to time, then at least you have a, bunch of friends ready for you.
Yeah. We always say that the content people are the coolest people. Like we just I love it. I love content people. All right. Any questions before we let everyone go? It's pretty late here, so I think we might let people go, but I will share through the chat, Rahel, for you, and you can always reach out through those channels that Rahel mentioned earlier for questions and follow up. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you next month.